Hey
All right.
everybody, welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour. I'm your host, John the Bod, aka the Bod Father. As always, I'm always bringing you awesome interviews, and this interview is another awesome one. I have my friend Daniel Emery Taylor. He is from Swamp Thing 2, and he's also Deviant Pictures co-owner of that. And I tell you what, this is awesome. Got my buddy on here, and we're talking about Halloween and all the good stuff with that involves with it. So, Daniel, what's going on, my friend?
Nothing much. Just kind of taking it easy this October. Normally, October is our busy month, but I decided to not do any conventions or anything and kind of, enjoy the Halloween season for once.
So, taking time off right now, is it a little weird right now for you, or are you saying, man, I wish I would have done some stuff, or how's it going?
No, well, I say take time off, but I'm still working on. We're in post production on our last film, so we're getting that edited, and I spent all day yesterday going through music files and stuff like that, and then we're actually in pre-production on our next film. So yeah, I've got a lot going on, but I'm just kind of staying at home and working on script type stuff and stuff like that.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't had a chance, Daniel is part of the controversial, I should say controversial, independent film called The Hospital.
Yes,
That
yes.
has raised some eyebrows, and I've been at some conventions that it's been shown at, and they have been people left from the showing. What the hell's up with that?
Well, it's that old saying that if you ever go to prison, you want to go up to the biggest guy there and kick him straight in the knee and let everybody know you mean business.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's when Jim O'Rear and I formed Deviant Pictures, we decided that right out of the gate we wanted to just do the biggest, baddest film we could in terms of just the sickest and most out there that we could possibly imagine. And I mean, you get kind of, I don't know, I guess when you work in horror film and you're constantly going over things, you get kind of jaded.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we didn't stop to consider just how big a response this would get. Because to us, you just kind of throw things back and forth and, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? And, wouldn't it be gross if we did this? And, all this kind of stuff. But, yeah, it was the response has been extraordinary. Everything from people who love it all the way down to, I know Jim was at a showing at a paranormal convention up in Louisville and had somebody physically get ill, had to leave and got sick in the hallway. So,
But when that happens, you could say success.
I mean, that needs to be on every one of our commercials. Truthfully, that needs to be our signature moment.
I mean, honestly, if you are a producer of horror movies, when you can make someone sick, and I'm not saying this out to be mean or anything like that, but in true movie fashion, if that happens, it's working. You did your job.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to get a reaction out of people, and we definitely got that reaction.
That's awesome, my friend. That's awesome. Now, I've seen Jim at some of these conventions, and he's having a blast with this hospital. Uh, do you think that they might be a possible part two? I haven't seen it yet, sadly, and I hate to say that, but I will eventually see this movie, and I'm wanting to. But do you think there's a part two, possibly?
In horror films, there is always a possibility for a part two. I will say that when we wrote it, Jim and I wrote it together, and when we wrote it, it was kind of written with the idea of a standalone story. But no, I mean, there's definitely a possibility. Nobody stays dead, and the bad guy's never fully defeated. So, and I don't mean in the hospital. I mean just in horror films in general.
Right. Now, you guys are working on. No, you guys just finished up on Fat Chance. And that's kind of
Yeah.
like a different twist. That's a more of a comedy side of a movie. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, Fat Chance. We wanted to go to kind of a different direction. Whereas the hospital contains some extreme circumstances for film. I mean, it includes scenes of rape and torture and necrophilia and all this really good wholesome stuff. And when it came time to do Fat Chance, which Fat Chance is actually a script I wrote a few years ago. So I wrote Fat Chance back, before there was a Deviant Pictures. Well, we decided that this was the film we wanted to roll with. We're going to go in a completely different direction with it. That Chance is more like Saturday the 14th, or those really goofy comedy horrors of the mid to late 80s. And it's just a real fun film. It's not a mean-spirited film at all. Not a controversial film. It's very much an homage to some of my favorite pictures like Sleepaway Camp and the various Friday the 13th films. But yeah, we decided just to go in a completely different feel, completely different ideas, completely different atmosphere from what we did in the hospital. And in the next picture, we're going in another direction. The next one's going to be more of a suspense thriller. So we just want to make sure we're covering all our bases. We don't want to get locked into, this is all that we do, and we do one type of picture and that's it.
Yeah.
We want to cover everything.
Yeah. Now I'm looking here, and it looks like the new movie that you guys are working on. If I could say this, the name of the movie is Prank Call. Is that right?
Yes. Prank Call. Jim actually co-wrote that script with another gentleman that he's known for a few years, and it's a fantastic script. Jim, sent it to me, said, "Here, what do you think about this?" And I read it, and I was so taken with the story. I was like, "Yes, absolutely, we have to do this," because it's different from the other two films that we've done. This one's it's like a cat and mouse, very suspenseful thriller. I mean, it is a horror film, definitely, but it's more. I would compare it almost more to like a Halloween type, Carpenter's Halloween. It's a lot of build up, a lot of suspense, a lot of good scares to it. And this one will be probably a little more polished than the other two, a little bit more commercial. I know that's sometimes a bad word to use in among horror films or among horror fans, but it's I'm really excited about it. It's going to be my first solo directing job, whereas I co-directed The Hospital and then I co-directed Fat Chance with Jim. This one I'll be flying solo, so we're really looking forward to that one.
I tell you what, I get a lot of weird looks when I say this, but the cheesier the horror movie, the better, I think.
I do too. I like I like goofy horror films. I mean, That's not all that I like, but I mean, I definitely like them. I just finished watching a Full Moon Pictures marathon all day of Puppet Master and Subspecies and Demonic Toys and all that good stuff.
Awesome.
And I mean, I love movies. Like those are the movies that have always been my favorites.
Puppet Master is a classic, man. I mean, even Pumpkinhead. Pumpkinhead is one of my all-time underrated horror movies.
Yeah, Pumpkinhead's great. Ghoulies, they just added the Ghoulies films to Netflix. I love those as well. Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just they're like roller coaster rides. Maybe they don't get in your head. Maybe they're not cerebral. Maybe they're not, making some kind of grand social commentary. But they're just fun. You put them on, and for 90 minutes, you're going to be entertained. And that's something that horror had lost for a while. And I always kind of blame the whole torture porn thing and the Saw franchise. I actually really like the Saw films for the most part. But after Saw came out, then you had a barrage of films that wanted to be like Saw.
Mm-hmm.
And horror became very mean-spirited, very just gruesome for the sake of being gruesome. Now, I like gore as much as the next guy, but I don't want it to just I don't want to watch a 5-minute scene of sticking a needle in somebody's eye. I mean, that to me is not entertaining. I want my gore to have a point.
Yeah.
And I want there to be a good story and good dialogue and lots of ups and downs. And even if the movie's goofy, it still has to have good pacing and things like that. And I feel that horror had gotten away from that. But hopefully, they say if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So hopefully, Deviant Pictures will be part of the solution.
Well, you always got to stick true to your guns. I mean, I've always said that about anything that you go for. Um, you just have to do what you can do and stay true.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's the main thing. Is just speaking for Jim and myself both. I mean, we're two guys who love horror films and have always loved horror films, and from horror films from the 1920s on up to today, and you can tell when a horror film has been written by or directed by someone who knows the genre. Because again, horror films have a very specific pacing to them. They have very specific tropes and plot points that are common throughout the genre, and you can tell when somebody has a real good grasp of that.
Before I forget this, and I'm glad we're talking about old school classic horror movies here, which I always love talking to you and about horror movies and stuff because when you're on the same page with that. Evil Dead 2, I saw that they're coming out with the new Evil Dead 2, or actually a part 2 of it. I don't know if you've seen it or not yet.
Yeah, from what I can tell, the plan is they're going to make a sequel to Army of Darkness with Bruce Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
Then they're going to make a sequel to Evil Dead, the reboot, and then they're going to make a third film that combines the two timelines. Because most people, and I don't want to spoil this for people who haven't seen it, but most people obviously have seen the little Bruce Campbell cameo at the end of the Evil Dead reboot, and the idea is that these are two completely different timelines that in that third film are going to cross, and I think that's a brilliant idea. I mean, because that explains the reboot, it explains um, how this would tie into the Evil Dead universe and everything else.
What about remakes? I know that it seems like Hollywood's getting so, so short on creativeness. You know what I mean? And they're taking on
Yeah.
these great classics and redoing them. They need to stop. But what, in your opinion, if you've seen any of the remakes, what's been the best one so far?
Um, I really like Rob Zombie's Halloween. I know a lot of people didn't, and they have some valid points. But to me, I like knowing the motivation for Michael Myers, and I like kind of having more of the backstory. And I like Rob Zombie as a filmmaker. But I thought that was a good one. The Texas Chainsaw remake was not bad. Friday the 13th was okay, and Nightmare on Elm Street was abysmal. I hated that one. Evil Dead, if you want to call that a remake, it's probably been the best, I think. Definitely the you can tell that with Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi both being involved, you can tell that they had a good respect for the source material.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of tell when the filmmakers have a love for what they're remaking. All in all, I look at remakes like anything else. I try to take every film on its own merits. Like for instance, Fright Night is one of my favorite films from the 80s. The original Fright Night I love. I watch it several times a year. So I went into the remake with an open mind. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to like this film as much as I like the original.
Mm-hmm.
But let me watch it as its own thing and see what I think about it. And it wasn't a bad movie at all. I mean, I liked it. It had some nods to the original, but it kind of told a new story. I don't mind that. Remakes they're not going away. They're just part of, I guess, the culture of Hollywood. And, Yeah, if it entertains you, watch it. If it doesn't, don't. Now, that's always been my recommendations for people. People get mad and all. I'll get mad. It's if a movie comes up and I don't want to watch, I just don't go watch it. And I think people just kind of need to vote with their pocketbooks. And the thing that gets me is people who hate remakes, but then they go to see everyone anyway,
Yeah.
and then they complain. Then they
Yeah.
complain about it on Facebook.
Yeah.
They're part of the problem.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't want to watch it, then don't go watch it because you're going to bitch about it when you get home. So, you know, I agree with you.
And oh gosh, I mean, I beat up on it all the time, but the Nightmare on Elm Street remake was horrific, and it was so bad. And it's not even. I mean, I know obviously it's not Robert Englund. Okay, well, I went into it thinking, okay, this is not going to be Robert Englund's Freddy. This is going to be an entirely new take on the character. And I think Jackie Earle Haley did as good of a job as anyone could in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he did. He's a fantastic actor anyway, and I thought he did as good of a job with his Freddy as anyone could. Trying to step into Robert Englund's shoes, so to speak, and taking a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
My problem with the movie was that the script was just terrible. The script was horrible. You didn't care about any of the characters. The characters were all annoying. The dialogue was bad. The pacing was bad. It's like they completely missed the point of the original film. The original film is scary. It's still scary because it's a psychological thing. It's that whole aspect of you don't know if you're awake or asleep. You don't know if this is the real world or you're dreaming. Freddy, you can't get away from him because he comes into the real world. He's in your dream world. You're never safe. And that was what was scary about it. It was a very psychological thing of the evil inside you, kind of. He's always there because he's in your thoughts. He's in your mind. But they completely missed that with the new film, and they try to kind of settle on just jump scares, and boo type scares. Freddy jumps up and screams or whatever. But that's not scary, and that doesn't work for that character. Mm-hmm. Popping out from behind a bush may work for Jason because it's a different character with different motivations and different history and all this kind of stuff. But Freddy has a very specific way of doing things, and the character has a very specific world in which he works, and just popping out from behind a pipe screaming "boo" just doesn't work, and it was silly and goofy, and I hated it, absolutely hated it. The one thing that I thought that they could have done that would have been interesting, they kind of toyed with the idea that, what if Freddy was really innocent and these parents killed him wrongly? That would have been an interesting angle to go in, because then he's like a vengeful spirit because he was wronged. But then they crapped on that at the end too, and the whole thing just fell apart. And I'm glad they haven't done these. Originally, I think I read that they were all contracted for like 2 sequels. I hope they do the Texas Chainsaw thing and just ignore it and go on and make another one.
Well, they could go back and redo A Nightmare on Elm Street and just toss this one out the window and say, "Hey, look, let's start all over."
Yeah, and that's basically what they did with the Texas Chainsaw 3D. Was they're like, all these other movies, they don't exist. We're just going to pick up after the first.
Yep.
And it kind of pisses a lot of horror fans off, but sometimes you just got to retcon some stuff and just ignore it and go back to the beginning.
I did get to see A Nightmare on Elm Street a couple days ago, and I did watch it. I did like some of it. It was a little bit okay, but you had no time to actually get into the movie. It's like, bam, you're already killing people. It's like, really? Not even 10 minutes into the movie. Usually there's a little bit longer time than that to build up to it, and then it goes. But this was just straight off the bat gone. And it's like, wow. That was quick. Still there?
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I think they're trying to figure out what the modern audience wants, and I think they're kind of selling the audience short. I just think that they don't think that modern audiences will appreciate cerebral horror, but I think they would. They just have to have a film that presents it to them.
Daniel, what made you and Jim want to start making movies and being directors? What brought that up?
We work with obviously we work with paranormal groups and things along the way. And we were at a location in Tennessee, an abandoned hospital that is haunted. It's a very active location, and we always enjoyed investigating. And I just kind of had the idea. I said, "Hey, Jim, has anybody made a movie where, like a killer has, hid in a haunted location and maybe he kills people and people think it's ghosts, but it's really him?" And Jim said, "No, I've never seen a movie like that." I said, we totally ought to write one. And then we just started batting ideas back and forth. And after I got home from that investigation, I pounded out the first draft of the script, sent it to Jim. He made, added some stuff and tightened some stuff up. We passed it back and forth a couple of times, and there it was. And then we have a script. And we're like, okay, well, who's going to shoot it? Well, we will. So then we got the crew together and, was working with a guy who had access to equipment from National Film Institute, and we were just kind of, off running. It was never a realization of, okay, we're going to be a film company now. It was just kind of, we had this great idea that we wanted to run with. We couldn't find anybody who we trusted to handle it, so we were going to handle it ourselves. And then from there, I mean, you already had everything in place that it was so easy just to roll right into the next one. So, and that's what we're doing, is always rolling from one directly into the next one.
Is it hard to, when you have auditions, is it hard to pick people out, or how do you guys work that out?
The audition process, because you're handling a lot of it through the internet, it's got its own set of challenges. I actually enjoy auditioning people. I like the casting aspect of it, because that to me is when it really begins to come alive, is when you really hear people start spouting off words that you've written. It's always a very cool thing. But it sometimes it's hard. Fat Chance was much more difficult than the hospital because we were looking for specific body types. Fat Chance, for your listeners who may not know, is about a bunch of overweight guys who go on a show like The Biggest Loser.
Yeah.
So we needed, obviously needed heavy actors, and some of them, so specific types. So that was more difficult. Hospital was pretty easy. I will say this, I've said this before, working with actresses and choosing actresses is 1,000 times easier than picking actors. Actresses tend to be much more professional, and they tend to have much better organizational skills. They follow directions better. Actors are kind of all over the board.
Yeah.
So in the hospital, our cast was primarily female, and that made things a lot easier because, when you're working with a bunch of guys, I think it's guys, I think that the issue is that they all want to do things their own way. But when you're looking for somebody who's going to be easily directable, that's not necessarily a quality that you would appreciate. So we just kind of run into things. You would tell people, okay, send me this information, send me this picture, and send me this video. And then they don't. Or they send you the wrong thing. Or they send you one thing but not the other thing, and then say that you didn't tell them that to send the other. Yeah, it's just a mess. But aside from that, just the organizational thing, it's that's the biggest issue with casting through the website or through websites.
I tell you what, I've seen some of the photos from Fat Chance, and some of it is pretty good. I've sat there and seen the photos and actually laughed. And I like the shirts that says by the pound. I, I think that's really cool.
Well, thank you. Pounded that logo out in about 10 minutes. So we thought it was funny too. We thought it was funny. No, it's actually I really hope it connects audiences because we had a blast filming it, and I hope that comes across when people are watching it. I've seen because Jim's doing most of the editing, and he sent me a scene the other day that I just cracked up until I had tears rolling out of my eyes. It was so funny. So I really hope that the audience appreciates it as much as, or has as much fun with it as we did.
Man, I tell you what, me and you both, we do paranormal investigating somewhat. Well, me somewhat nowadays. But what about yourself? Have you done anything recently?
No, I actually have not done anything in the paranormal community for quite a while. I don't know. I think a lot of it is the paranormal community seems to be kind of receding a little bit. I think some of the ghost hunters, ghost adventures, wannabes are kind of finding other interests, which is probably a good thing because that will lead to, I think, much more trustworthy investigations.
Mm-hmm.
But no, there doesn't seem to be as many paranormal conventions in this part of the country currently.
No, there's not. And like you said, I mean, the weeding out is begun, pretty much. And I got out of it for my own reasons. It just was not interesting anymore to me. Let's face it, after 5 years of investigating and researching, there's only so much you can go, so.
Yeah. My thing is, there's just, and I say this with all due respect to, those who are out there really investigating and really trying to find answers,
Yeah.
but there's just so much drama in the paranormal community. And I don't know if the paranormal, just by its nature, draws in loony people, or if there's just so many few really good locations that people fight over them. I don't know what the issues are. But there's just tons and tons of drama. Jeez Louise. If I had that much drama on a film set, I'd fire everybody. It's just a lot of backbiting and he said, she said. And,
Yeah.
different locations bad mouthing each other.
Yeah.
And we're more haunted than they are. It's like, really, that's kind of ridiculous.
And I think too, man, it's like these TV shows ain't helping none at all. So, you've got these people that are going to the extremes to get on TV. And I'm sorry, a faker's a fake. I mean, hands down.
Yeah.
So, I think that, like you said, it's just begun the process of weeding out and everything. I'm still interested in it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I still love it. Still interested in it. But, and plus the fact of paying like a couple $1,000s to investigate a place for overnight. Nah, if I'm going to pay that much, I'm going to have it for the whole week.
Yeah. And it's so many of these places too. I'm not going to say the location because I don't want to, badmouth anybody's livelihood. But
Right.
we went to and again, this was Jim and myself. We were at a convention and we had an overnight investigation at this hotel. And the hotel, they said they half the hotel was being renovated, and the part that was being renovated was the haunted part. So of course you go in and everything's creepy, and there's like all the ceiling tiles are down, and there's insulation hanging everywhere, and all this, and it's haunted, it's haunted. And we didn't see anything, we didn't hear anything, we didn't get any kind of there was nothing on a K2 meter. There was nothing there. This place was not haunted at all. And come to find out, talking to some of the locals, this hotel had a bad reputation for. Apparently, there'd been people who'd built built meth labs in one of the hotel rooms, and all this kind of stuff. And
Holy cow.
everybody's idea was kind of that they were trying to use this paranormal angle to bring people back to the hotel, as a marketing thing. And to me, that's ridiculous. And once businesses and locations and parks and things like that have gotten this idea that, hey, we can claim to be haunted, and then people will come pay $50 a head to stay here overnight, that's when it all went downhill. And that's when, the wheels kind of came off of it, because then it was just another marketing ploy by companies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the, like you said, I'm not bashing nobody or anything like that, but it's sad that it's came to that, honestly, it's, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's human nature. I mean, people are always trying to find that angle. That to me, when you have locations and big locations and well-known locations that are faking evidence and all this other stuff just to draw people in, you almost get to the point where you can't trust anything anymore. I would be more willing to trust, the little old lady at the end of the street who says her house is haunted and wants somebody to help her. I think she's probably more trustworthy than one of these big, sanitariums or something who, charge hundreds of dollars for people to investigate.
This is very true. Daniel, man, I want to thank you for taking time out, and again, for being a guest on BODS Mayhem out here for the second annual Halloween thing, and this is your second time being interviewed for the Halloween special, so, hey, you'll be here next year, too, with me.
Absolutely. I wouldn't miss it, and thank you for having me back. It's always a good time. Always a good time seeing you. Hopefully I'll get to see you on the convention circuit sometime this year.
Yeah, Daniel's been a good friend of mine ever since the first time I met him, and love the guy to death. And if y'all have ever a chance to check his movies out and meet him at a convention, man, you think you've talked to the guy 100 years. So, Daniel, how can they get a hold of you guys if they want to check out your and Jim's movies, and how to get a hold of you all for conventions? How can they do that?
You can actually, Jim and myself are both on Facebook, so you can contact us through that. We also just this week set up the Deviant Pictures Facebook page, so it's facebook.com/Deviant Pictures, and then we both run that page, so you can get in touch with either of us through that as well.
All right, awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, stick around. We have some music coming up, and I want to thank my guest tonight, Daniel Emery Taylor. And this is the BODS Mayhem Hour Halloween tribute thing going on here. So thank you guys. Have a safe trick or treat. Check your candy because you never know what's in it. Daniel may have put ice in it to get candy out and just track the bag and get all the candy off the ground. So who knows? So thank you, Daniel, man, and be good, dude.
All right, take it easy.
Thanks, guys, for this is BODS Mayhem Hour. You only hear these interviews right here on Uber City Radio.